I live in Buffalo, New York. When I moved here several years ago, I found myself quite shocked about the food culture in the city. Everyone around the world knows wings, but there is so much more to the food culture in this city. Recently, I found a book called Buffalo Everything, a guide to eating in the Nickel City, and it was exactly what I was looking for. The author is Arthur Bovino, a restaurant, food media, and travel writer based in New York City who went deep on the food culture of Buffalo and came up with a book that accompanied me through the recent Christmas blizzard of 2022. I am delighted to discuss Buffalo Everything and its complimentary cookbook, the Buffalo, New York Cookbook, with author Arthur Bovino. We go deep on pizza, wings, beef on weck, and much more. Enjoy. Arthur Bovino, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I am delighted to have you here, Arthur. We're going to chat a lot about the city that I live in, Buffalo, New York, today. I'm delighted that you're here, and I'm wondering if you can just spend a moment and introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, however you see fit.
I'm a food writer, an editor. I've been in food media going back to, I think it's 2009, culinary trained, worked in a bunch of restaurants, was the founding restaurant editor for the Daily Meal, book author twice over with the Buffalo books that we're talking about today. And I'm currently the head of pizza content for Uni Pizza Ovens.
Amazing. That is so cool. So pizza is kind of like your specialty from what I gather. Is that accurate?
Pizza is really what led me to Buffalo to begin with, because I had been writing these lists about the best pizzerias in the country. And, I'm based in New York in the East Village. I consider myself well-versed in a lot of pizza culture, but one of the pizza cultures that I really didn't have in my repertoire was Buffalo. And I felt like it was a particularly big miss, being that it's in my own home state that I hadn't visited and checked it out. And so when I had the opportunity to possibly write a book about a Buffalo sauce themed book, I was like, great, this will give me an excuse to go do research, quote unquote, and really get a chance to check out the Buffalo pizza scene. So that was the reason why. And then the book turned into something else.
Man, I love this. So can I tell you a little bit about the history of why your book matters to me?
Please.
Okay, so everybody in the country just heard about the December Christmas 2022 blizzard that was essentially a natural disaster here in Buffalo. Yeah. My power went out on day 2. My cell phone died about an hour and a half later after my power went out. My car, which could have charged my phone, was buried inside of my garage. The sun was going down, and then I got my fireplace lit. I know. So I got the fireplace lit, and then an 80-mile-an-hour gust of wind blew smoke down my chimney back into my house and filled my entire house with smoke. And so I'm in the blizzard, a house filled with hazy smoke, freaking out that I'm going to carbon monoxide poison myself. I get out some camping lamps, and I lay on the floor with camping lamps, and I read your book, Buffalo Everything, A Guide to Eating in the Nickel City, cover to cover, in one sitting, laying in the dark during the Christmas blizzard of 2022. So this book has become a really important text for me, because not only did it keep me company for this entire blizzard, but it's also, I read it in Buffalo, about Buffalo, and it gave me an appreciation for the city that I was like, okay, I'm going to stay positive here to get through this. And I have a new journey to go on food-wise after I get out of this disaster. So it was I'm telling you, man, it was an important experience for me to have this book during that blizzard. So I just wanted to tell you the entire story of what I was going through when I read it, because I got into this with you through a seriously dangerous moment, but without that blizzard and no electricity, no distractions, it would have taken me way longer to read it, but it was the perfect time and place for me to read this book. So I just wanted to tell you the entire story.
Well, I'm honored and touched by that, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. And having read the book, then you know how dense it is, and that's probably a well-suited time to get through something like Buffalo everything. But I'm glad that it was able to accompany you on your journey and set you on a new food journey afterwards. Thank you for sharing.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit more about this journey of how you got interested in buffalo. You said you started as a sauce book. I presume by sauce you mean like wings and things like that. But tell me a little bit about your history of the city, and how you came to like immerse yourself in this topic.
Yeah, I mean, originally a friend of mine had been approached to write a buffalo sauce cookbook, and she is vegetarian. And
Mhm.
so she said, this sounds fun, but it's not really going to fall into my wheelhouse, considering how much meat kind of plays into wings, et cetera. So she referred the agent to me. And long story short, I was like, oh, this is, like I said, this is an excuse for me to go up to Buffalo and check out the pizza scene. And when I got up there, I'm a native New Yorker, but I was born in Queens, and I spent a good portion of my childhood on Long Island, and then my adult life in New York City proper. Haven't really spent any time in Buffalo per se. Once I got up there, I realized, the provincialism and of my New York life kind of fell away, and I
Mhm.
just found great food town and so many rich culinary traditions that just, they were threads. And once you started pulling on the thread, it just kept going. And you found so many other things, beef on weck, sponge candy, all these different things that, Tom and Jerry's, that are so inherent to the culinary fabric of Buffalo. And yet outside of the city, not a ton of people know about them.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to experience it as much as possible. And as soon as I did that, and I realized how much history there was there, I came back and I said, this is much more than a sauce book. This is
Mhm.
like, there's just so much more here.
Man, that is absolutely beautiful. And people in the country don't realize that Buffalo and New York City are about 400 miles apart. Like, they don't realize how insanely humongous the state of New York actually is. So people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to New York City. You want to hang out? And I'm like, dude, that is 400 miles away from me. We're up here away from a lot. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, it's only like, it's not a far ride when you take a plane, but like, it is. I think I looked this up for the book, and I can't remember the exact distance, but if you go a certain way from New York to Buffalo and you measure it, it's like you're starting to approach like Texas distances in terms of how far these two places are. 100%.
Yes. Okay. So tell me about this timeline here. Like the time that you kind of like realized this was a book, and then spending time in the city. Tell me about like the length of research. I'm just curious about like the ins and outs of the whole process.
Yeah, so I mean, I basically moved up to Buffalo for 2 weeks, and just dove in, and I would eat at like anywhere from 1 to 12 places or 10 places or whatever it was a day, depending on what I was trying to do. If I was trying to hit wing spots or hit pizza places, meet up with as many people as I possibly could to interview them. So it was a nonstop affair, and I did it again for another 2 week period down the road. So it was over a course of about a month that I basically lived in Buffalo. And I got Airbnbs or whatever it was, and just kind of wasn't spending that much time, at the place. I was trying to get around to as much of the city as possible. And, the people were super amazing. And just in terms of introducing me to other people, Donnie Burtless and Krista Glennie Sechu, they're so important in terms of making introductions to the right people and continuing to open up different doors and learn so much more.
Amazing. Where was your home base? Like, where are you camping out whenever you were staying up here?
I moved around,
Mm.
honestly. I moved around in different neighborhoods. So, I couldn't say specifically like one place. And that was part of what was great about doing it in that way. If I had to stay in one place for a week and then move somewhere else, whether I was in Elmwood or I was wherever I was, it was about being able to live in that neighborhood and see
Mm.
what that neighborhood was like. It's just different than, hey, I'm going to drive down this street, or I'm going to take a walk and, figure out different areas of the city. So, yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do in Buffalo is to, go on walks especially in the summertime and in the fall. So I'll go to a neighborhood and I'll basically just kind of do like grid walks, like up and down the streets and stuff like that, just to kind of immerse myself in areas and get a sense of the vibe. So I completely understand what you mean, because Buffalo has got these tiny little pockets, just like any major city, that are so fascinating and unique and different, like the way the houses look and the paint jobs and the way the streets are laid out. And then you have some streets that are like up and down, north, south, east, west. But then you also have streets that run like in the grid system, that run like spreading out from Niagara Plaza or Niagara Square downtown. So I just love the way that, you know, you can go on these walks and get a sense of what the city feels like. And I'm sure that that played a lot into your experiences as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, walking and biking are two of the best ways I feel like to really get to know a city, or going for a run. You know, that's another great way. It's kind of the same thing, but moving through those spaces, it's the only really way to understand a city, I feel like.
Let's get into some food here. Okay, so you're a pizza guy, so I want to start there. I want to hit pizza right away. So I originally moved here from St. Louis. So I'm sure you're aware of St. Louis style pizza, the almost like a saltine cracker thin crust and then a tiny layer of cheese on top of it. It's like we're talking the thinnest pizza that you can possibly make. And then when I moved here to Buffalo, I was completely blown away by this pizza. I am not even joking. Like within a week, I realized that this was something that I had never had in my entire life. So I realized immediately by sampling the local pizzerias. I live in Amherst, which is like a suburb, first ring suburb right on the edge of Buffalo. And there's Buffalo style pizza places all around me. So right when I was moving in, what do you do when you move into a new place? You order pizza because it's the easiest thing to get. And so I was immediately blown away. And I want to know about, your experience of realizing that Buffalo pizza was something special. Tell me a little bit about that, because I'm curious about what that experience was like for you too.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard about Lenova and Bocce forever. So those are the two places that make a lot have gotten recognition nationally. And so those are the places that were on my radar. I didn't know about a De Niro's or a Lovejoy or, all of these places until I got, or a Santora's until I got there. And, you get these also very confusing descriptions of Buffalo pizza. I think in the book, I describe Buffalo pizza as typically a cup and char pepperoni pizza with a slim, sometimes non-existent crust, coastline with ingredients out to and sometimes even over the edge, a thick, airy undercarriage with little to no structural integrity that's topped by a sweet sauce and enough cheese to nearly always guarantee a cheese pull. If you are going to use other regional styles to describe it, I'd say it's a Detroit amount of cheese with a Motor City trim, a main undercarriage, think Portland's Macucci's or Slab, and a New York City sole. That's the best, when I thought about it over and over again, that's the best way I could do it. Listen, it's a sweeter pizza. It's a thicker pizza. It's a cheesier pizza. It's an indulgent pizza. It's over the top. I love when I talked to Anthony Kulik of Lovejoy, he was talking about how, it's extra for everybody else. And for Buffalo, it's just standard. And part of that, it's just like, I'm just going to enjoy this. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to think about it. This isn't pizza that you're going to take your napkins and blot off of. Eat your pizza. Just enjoy it. It's meant to be something that you enjoy. I didn't know about all the crust customizations. I didn't know about all of the different topping combinations, steak in the grass, and all these, different things that you don't really see outside of Buffalo. So they were a real revelation. And just, we have we call it pizza bones, where you get those crusts that people leave behind. Like when you have that kind of level of attention and love to the crust, where you have all of this extra stuff that you're tricking it out, with, you notice it. It's like, these are people that like to eat. Yeah.
Man, tell me a little bit more about the sweet sauce, because that was to me, that's the essential part. A lot of people talk about the cup and char pepperoni, which is also amazing, but I want to know about your thoughts on the sauce, particularly because it's essential to the pizza. Like I had a pizza last week in Buffalo that I didn't love, and I realized it's because I didn't like the sauce a whole heck of a lot. I'm curious about your thoughts on the importance of the sauce.
Yeah, I mean, there's usually a puree that's mixed in with a sauce, or it's a puree base. And so it's a sweeter thing. And so if you don't like that kind of thing, it's going to be a problem. But you need, with all of the fat that you can have on a pizza like this with all that cheese, you really do want some more acid to kind of break it up. So that's the way I kind of look at it. The other part of this is the cup and char pepperoni. cup and char has become super well known across the country and increasingly around the world. But you go back a couple of years ago, and this was not something that was featured in front page articles on the Wall Street Journal, cup and char pepperoni. This is something that everybody in Buffalo knew and loved. And, a couple of places started to popularize it. But in Buffalo for decades, it never went away. It was always there.
So you're telling me that people that you're seeing as a person who pays attention to the pizza scene, you're seeing cup and char pepperoni popping up around the country right now?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's been a big trend over the past couple of years. And my friend Krista Glenny, who I mentioned earlier, who is super well tapped into the scene there. I love the way she described it to me when she basically talked about Buffalo and the culinary scene there. And she talked about, there being this cloche, this chef cloche, one of those fancy metal domes that are placed over your plates and brought to you tableside, and all of a sudden lifted off, and there's a big reveal of your food. She liked to talk about Buffalo as having been under a cloche for all of these years because of this reputation that it had outside the city for blight or for blizzards, for all these different things. When the city went from being, this place where all of the rich people of New York and the country were had houses to changing over time. But those culinary traditions being preserved. Certainly, cup and char is one of those things where you had after World War II. Sorry, you asked. But after World War II,
bring it, man, bring it.
The production, these food companies and production factories looked for ways around to mass produce the food. And so one of the things that happened, as far as I understand it, is that you went away from this collagen casing that was on the pepperoni, and that's something that happened with a lot of product outside of Buffalo, but you had local producers that continued doing what they were doing. And so you had that tradition there. Now, what's happened is because of Instagram and places like Prince Street Pizza, which really super popularized it over the past 10 years, you have all of these photos of these little cups of pepperoni grease with that pop out of your Instagram or pop out on social media, and people know how delicious they are now, and they've spread just because of how beautiful they look. So yeah, it's definitely become a thing.
Nice. There's a guy or a person, actually, I don't know who it is. It's an anonymous Instagram account, Sexy Slices. I know that you're aware of Sexy Slices, and I know that you got to interview Sexy Slices, which is a pretty big deal. Sexy Slices is a big deal up here. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience of the anonymous pizza reviewer and how maybe that informed some of your experiences as well as a researcher up here.
Yeah, Sexy, as I just like to call him. No, in all seriousness, he's great or she's great. I can't say if it's a he or a she. But they are awesome. I definitely enjoyed meeting with Sexy Slices. I would not have gone up to Lockport if it was not for Sexy Slices and had that experience up there. And it's not exactly like a one-to-one with the rest of the pizza, I think, in the city. But the spot up there that I went to with him ended up being one of my favorites. And it was just so indulgent and over the top and delicious. He's Sexy Slices is just a lot of fun, and doesn't take things too seriously. And there's a real fun tone through all of the writing. And so it's just awesome. Super kind enough to meet with me, and got to meet the significant other of the half of Sexy Slices as part of that. Was super happy to see a lot more work come out down the road, in the Buffalo News and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm checking the book right now, and you ranked Lock City Pizza in Lockport as number 4 in your favorite pizza journey here.
It was amazing. It was awesome. Super sloppy, but really delicious. My other fun part of meeting of the pizza people was talking with Joe Todaro also, and that where he's got this reputation as being part of the mafia, and there are all these rumors swirling around, and you try and do this research on this and find out what's going on. And I knew I was going to have to ask him the question, and I'll never forget when I asked him, so I have to ask, like, are you in the mob? And there was just this pause on the other end of the line, and he just goes, Arthur, where did you say you live? And I was like, oh, good. All right. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but to be able to have conversations with, with locals like that on the scene and legends, it was great.
Amazing. What are a couple pizzerias in Buffalo that you feel like shouting out for just out of memory?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I love Lovejoy. De Niro's, I think, closed since I wrote the book, but I really love that a lot. I know that people have this weird perception of Santora's, and there's different Santora locations, and so the one that I went to, which was the oldest one, really, I really enjoyed that one. I thought that was fantastic. But all of those places, I would go to all of those again. I wouldn't have put them in the book if they weren't places that I would revisit. For me, the criteria, and I could talk about pizza all day, so be careful.
Man.
But for me, the criteria is: am I already thinking about this slice and when I'm going to have it again next, as I'm still eating it? Like that's the pizza that I put in the book, and that's the kind of pizza that I always think of as like the best. Bocce I thought was great. Lanova, obviously, De Niro's, as I said. Macy's place
Macy's, that's my place.
Fun. It's always fun on Instagram doing crazy stuff, but just the standard stuff was great. Of course, Imperial and is an institution. Artone's a little bit of a hole in the wall, but go check it out. It's another fantastic place. Mr. Pizza. Now listen, Mr. Pizza, I gotta be honest, it could be a hit or miss proposition, but it's on. It is awesome.
Oh, dude, I agree. I've had great pizza there.
And I've gone there and also been I'm waiting for 45 minutes and what's going on. So I don't mean to whatever, but it is what it is. It was great. Lovejoy, Ricotta's, some of the lesser known.
Ricotta's, yes, Niagara Street, so great. I love Macy's. It's really not that far from me, so I go to Macy's regularly. And Carbone's on South Park in South Buffalo by Gene McCarthy's. Oh my gosh, love that. Love Zaz, love Franco's, love Imperial, love Muscarella's. There's a new place called Extra Pizza. So if you ever come up here again, check that out. They're so good. You mentioned Lovejoy, and there's an interesting section. Let's jump to wings. There's an interesting section in the book where the owner of Lovejoy talks about how the Cajun wings are their favorite menu item that they feel like people aren't ordering a whole heck of a lot of. And that story jumps out at me really quick. So I'm definitely curious to hear about your journey with wings, because, that's what we're way more well known for. But that doesn't seem to be what brought you here, which is super interesting to me. So I'm wondering if you can talk to me a little bit about your journey with wings, coming through the city, because the wings here are, it's kind of hard to describe, and you've really dove head first into this scene. So let's go into wings. Tell me, where do you go with this story from here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I knew I was coming, my secret agenda was to go and hit all these pizza places. But I mean, I love all kinds of comfort food. And so wings, once, obviously I was going to do it right when I got there. I didn't expect Anchor and Duff's, being these places that were so well known outside of the city, to necessarily be as good as all the hype around them. I did really enjoy both of those places, but really it was a journey in technique, in understanding sauce, in understanding the ritual. How do you eat a wing the right way? Is there a right way? Flats versus drums, and do Buffalonians actually want to order the super spicy wings? I'd ask these kinds of questions. What's the history behind the blue cheese and the celery? And started looking around for all these stories also about the origins of the wings, and you realize very quickly, as much research has been done, there were a lot of kind of hanging details. When you talk about John Young,
Yes.
who's mentioned in the famous New Yorker essay by God, this is where I mentioned to, my brain is falling apart in terms of memory. What's his name? Oh God, I want to say Craig, but it's not. Anyway, there's a famous essay in the New Yorker, and John Young is mentioned offhand as, oh, and I went to this place and they said John Young, and I met John Young, the King of Wings, and like you're like, well, where and what happened, and it's this kind of like little hanging thing, and then you find out there's this whole other history to it. Now, John has since then gotten a lot more notoriety in the past couple of years since the book's been published. His daughter has been, has recreated the sauce, and I know that Drew Surza from, of local Buffalo wing fame has tasted the wings, and I know that there's been some other interviews, but a lot of this stuff was kind of in the local library, on microfiche or on small kind of scurried away papers, and I didn't see a place that really brought together all of the details of buffalo wing history. And one of the things that I was most honored by was Andrew Gallarno from the Buffalo News called the history of buffalo wings in this book the most comprehensive version that he's ever seen or heard of. And that made me pretty proud. There's a great documentary about trying to find the best buffalo wings. And part of that, there was one of the last remaining alive members of that storied group of people that supposedly came into the bar that night and saw everything that happened. And, putting that story together with all of the rest of these details, I feel like gave a much more comprehensive overview of where this history came from. But it's easy to see why somebody would tell the story the way it's been repeated over and over again. Kid comes into the bar, Mom, can you make me and my friends some food? We're really hungry. Take these wings, these leftover things that were sent by accident or that they had, and toss them in some hot sauce and, eat it's a much easier story to tell than, hey, there was also this other place a couple of blocks away from a Southerner who moved up north. It's like, if you have to explain it in longer than 2 sentences, you're done. It's already like the myth is destroyed.
Man, so I found it in the book where you wrote the 1980 article for the New Yorker. American journalist, humorist, and food writer Calvin Trillin is the name of the author.
I remember, I forgot Calvin Trillin's name.
Yeah. So that's really cool, though. Was it easy for you to find that article? Like, if you go out and Google 1980 Calvin Trillin, New Yorker, Buffalo, like, will this article pop up still to this day?
Yeah, 100%. That's you can find that, and it's really one of the first. I feel like if you look back in terms of where food journalism has come from, that's a big one. I'm not a culinary journalism historian, but to me and everything that I've read over the years, it's one of the big, like, here's this culinary tradition. Let's try and figure out where it started from. Here's my experience with it, reporting on the ground. Like, Calvin Trillin really did a lot to move that forward, I feel like.
Nice. Your top 4 here are really interesting. 911 Tavern, Elmo's, Gabriel's Gate, and Bar Bill. You go into a lot of detail about Bar Bill and their methods, and I'm wondering if you can talk to me a little bit about what it is that you learned from the people who treat this almost like a science and an art combined. Like, tell me a little bit about this experience of learning about the process of putting these things together. Because I went to Bar Bill last weekend, and the line was out the door at Bar Bill North, the second location, and it was like an hour and a half wait in like 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon. I'm just like, I want to know about the process of what you learned and what stands out to you about your memories of meeting the people who do this for a living.
Yeah, 911 Tavern is a kind of place where if you haven't been or haven't heard of it, it was, I think the owner actually passed away since the book was written, unfortunately, and his daughter has taken over. But one guy working in the kitchen, one fryer, and, he's just going along at a time when these wings are going to come out, and then meticulously piled them up in this, like, Jenga tower sundial kind of format, so that they just look really pretty. And he treated them with care, as opposed to, flip them over in a bowl. Not that there's anything wrong with that, onto the plate, and they're steaming through in with the bowl on top and, the underneath. And here they're not steaming through. They're crispy right out of the fryer. They're delicately balanced. They're presented nicely. And, that's an experience that you have. But technique wise, I mean, a place like Elmo's, which I am fascinated by, where they do like a triple fry or a double fry or a sear on the grill as part of it. And so you get these layers of texture from the sauce on the wings, on the grill, caramelizing, and then they get fried and then dipped again and then fried. It's like, what is going on here? There's much more detail than anybody originally, would think about it coming to this. The other thing you learn is, like, if you're getting your wings quickly, most likely those wings have been sitting there. And so, it's like not getting frustrated as a customer going into these spots and knowing like it's going to take some time, because it takes time for wings to cook through the right way and to get that crispiness going on. But have a place like Bar Bill that paints the sauce on, or as opposed to tossing it in a bowl. And is that because they're trying to save on food costs and there's just a lot of extra stuff flying in the bowl or getting up on the sides as opposed to applying it directly to the wing? Or and like, hey, well, then you start to ask, well, how does this affect the speed? And you just mentioned, Gregory, the lines out the door. And you're like, well, if you're painting each wing, it seems like that's probably a reason why it's going to take longer. And then they were telling me, no, actually, we think we're faster by painting each wing than if we're tossing, and we get a more even and consistent application of the sauce. Dude, that is a level of detail and commitment, like to a food that, like, outside of Buffalo, you're not getting that. You're not. I mean, you don't get. Listen. Here in New York City, I'm going to do a shout out. We're going to talk about shout outs. Dan and John's is my favorite wing spot. Two guys from Buffalo in the East Village. They've now become, bigger. They have another spot in Essex Street Market. I think that they're in City Field, or they were at least. And they've really they've got their own Pilsner now that they're putting out. I love those guys. I love that they're from Buffalo and they do great wings. But it's that care and attention to detail that you just don't see outside of the city.
Man, I love it. Did you try a whole bunch of different flavors? Because the wing variety flavors in Buffalo are very wide. You got your honey mustards, and you've got your medium hot, and you got your rankings of the heat levels. I'm curious, like, some stuff that stands out to you about the flavors.
So I had to listen, Gregory, I had to walk a line here at some point. Like, you need a baseline, and I already gained at least 20 pounds over period of the month that I did this research. And I wasn't just eating wings, and I wasn't just eating pizza. I was eating beef on weck, and I was checking out the fine dining scene, and I was doing other things. So I felt a responsibility to know what a range of heat felt like, from mild, medium, hot, extra hot. I felt a responsibility to try the most notable other flavors when I encountered them. But if I was going to order, 7 different kinds of wings at every spot, I would be, first of all, needing a much bigger group of people to be friends with that were going around with me doing this, or I would be throwing out a lot of food, much more than I already, I ended up trying to give away food to people that I would meet, or people that were homeless, because I was ordering so much food and going from place to place. But I couldn't try every single flavor. Here's what I will say. The garlic, the Red Sox wings that I had, I think it's is it Weechex, or was it? Oh, it's not Weechex. Is it Weechex?
No, I don't think it's Weechex. Weechex is somewhere else in the book.
Yeah. There's a place that does the garlic parm wings that they're called Red Sox wings. And when I talked to them about the Red Sox wings, I was like, what? I'm in a bar that's got all of these televisions on that have the Yankees playing during the summer. Why are these called Red Sox wings? And it turned out that the bartender who named them, or the guy who named them, said that he knew that they were really good, and it was really going to piss off all the Yankee fans that they had to order something called Red Sox wings, even though just because they were so delicious, they were going to have to do it. And so that, I thought that was, taking the piss out of Yankee fans, and I'm a Yankee fan, but I could appreciate that. And the fact that you marry, the hot sauce with the garlic and the Parmesan. Like that was awesome for me. And it's not something that you're going to encounter a lot. If you ask somebody to do that outside of Buffalo, they're going to be like, what do you want me to do? You want me to mix what? And that's gross, or that's whatever. And, it was delicious and fantastic. So that one, I think, really stood out the most for me. That one in Elmo's, where you had those double fried, grilled wings. I think it was the Cajun, I can't remember the name of it, but it was almost like you had a French technique being applied to the wings, where they're being seared first on a grill and then being cooked again, in this case being fried. So yeah, those are the ones that really stuck out to me the most.
Amazing. Well, so you brought up beef and weck, and which is something that a lot of people wouldn't know about outside of here. It's a roast beef on a Kimmelweck roll, which is topped with kosher salt and caraway seeds. Tell me about your experience with the beef on weck from Buffalo, New York.
A steak sandwich is one of these things that folks really, I think, idolize outside of Buffalo. You've got a famous place, Phillips in Los Angeles, and you'll have places that try and do it. You've obviously got Philly cheesesteaks, and you've got these iconic sandwiches. But Buffalo's beef on weck, there are so many components that go into this. Like, you talk about ritual. Some of the places that do this, that have the carving stations, listening to the guy tap the knife on the cutting board, or tap the meat as he's doing it, and just the amount of time that goes into roasting the beef, and then the super thin slices. You can have this like attention to you have New York fish slicers and New York pastrami slicers at Katz's that I get idolized for how thinly and consistently they slice these things. You have to have that kind of same consistency with beef on weck, and then the dip and the horseradish and that aspect to it, and how fast you have to eat the sandwich before it falls apart, and the squishiness and super punchy salt flavor, and from the roll. The thing that's interesting to me is, like, listen, it's really funny because as you research the Buffalo culinary scene and the history of wings, at least, you had people who were involved with wings very early on, who saw the potential for them beyond Buffalo. And some people would say, do you think this could catch on in other cities? Do you think other people are going to like this? Do you think we could franchise this? And various levels of success doing that. And obviously they've gone around the world and taken off and taken the world by storm. Beef on weck, it's got a compelling story. It's a delicious sandwich. The problem is with beef on weck, but the bread is so important to the sandwich. And it's a chicken egg scenario, because unless there's a demand for that type of roll outside of the city, there's really no reason to put the care and attention into that kind of roll to make it a compelling sandwich. And so you can't let people know about it unless they've had it, and they can't have it unless they know it. And unless they go to Buffalo, they're not going to, it's a really hard thing. Whereas with wings, I can fry my wings. It's not going to be the same as that attention to detail as we've discussed. They're still delicious. I think, with the roll, the problem is that they don't travel. And also the salt wicks out the moisture from the bread. And so you get this stale bread. And then people are like, well, why would I want to eat this? It's like, well,
oh my gosh,
that's why. So yeah, I mean, it's an epic sandwich. And having one of those with a Tom and Jerry during the colder months, and then just saying, you know what, I'm good. Or maybe I'll have another couple Tom and Jerry's and move on.
Amazing. Well, you mentioned the local, that local drink too, the Tom and Jerry. This is wonderful. But I did go back and find the Red Sox story in the book to verify that it is in fact Wheatchecks in Kaisertown on Clinton Street in Buffalo. Okay. So just wanted to verify, because I said no. That was in my mind. It's okay. And I had to go through and I had to find it, because I knew the people listening, especially people in Buffalo, are gonna be like, it is Wheatchecks. It's Wheatchecks. You're an idiot. So I had to go back and I had to find that. There's so many other things in the book. You've got fine dining, you've got hot dogs, you've got desserts. I'm like, what jumps out at you about stuff that we don't have time to go into today? Because there's just so much in this amazing book. I just wanted to see if there's anything else you felt really compelled to shout out before we, kind of bring us in for a landing today.
Yeah, I feel like all of these, as we mentioned, I think the fine dining scene has turned over a bit since the book was written. So I think there's a lot of new and exciting, fun stuff that's happened since I wrote the book. For folks that haven't visited Buffalo, I would say know about sponge candy, know about the hot dogs. They're really delicious. They're grilled over charcoal, and they've just got this like smoky char thing going on. And then, you know, the Paula's donuts and having the peanut chew donut. And I mean, there's and the ice cream. I mean, everything, as we mentioned before, I like to call Buffalo America's comfort food capital. And I really think like any of these things that you love, pizza, wings, candy, ice cream, like, you know, and it's not just these like mainstream American perceived things. There's great tacos, and there's, you know, you've got the global market situation, so you can go and have all kinds of different culinary experiences. It's not just American comfort food, but it's just a great food town, and it's a great town. It's people are just friendly and nice, and it's just, you know, it's a good place to be. My sister lives there now. I'm probably going to be visiting this summer again because now my sister lives there, which is fantastic.
I mean, I would go dine with you, my friend.
Oh, I would love to do that.
If you come visit, we'll go. I would love to eat with you, or just get a drink and hang out. You've got a complimentary cookbook, the Buffalo, New York cookbook, 70 recipes, old school wings, Blue Bayou wings, beef on weck, Ted's hot dog relish, spinach leaf, pizza logs. How did the cookbook come about? Because it's a complimentary volume, totally separate.
Well, they asked me for one book, and I gave them one book, but it had basically become two books. And so what they could have done was just said, we got to cut all this stuff. And they decided instead, how about we turn this into a compendium and it'll be another book. And so that's what happened. Publisher decided to put out two books instead of one. But the recipes were always part of the idea. That was always meant to be part of what the book was going to be. The one thing I will note, to my embarrassment, to anybody who does pick up the book that hears the podcast, I'm just going to throw out there and note the sauce recipe for the pizza is wrong. So it is meant to be a 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. People write to me and they say, this doesn't seem right. Why is this sauce super thin? And what? It's because the recipe's wrong. Like it didn't go. It got copy edited, and that got missed somehow in the process. And I would love for there to be a second printing so that we could fix that. But just if you're going to make that recipe, it's a 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste, please.
Amazing. Okay. What did you get any feedback in the aftermath of the book's release that really stands out to you? Like, how did the locals take this?
As I, you know, there was some press, and we got some radio interviews and whatnot. So a couple of, I think, two TV spots. I think the biggest compliment I attribute to Andrew Gallerno, really, where he said, "This is the book that I wish that I had written." And for the critic in Buffalo to say that, I felt touched and humbled and honored to hear him say that, and really meant a lot to me. I mean, it didn't like spread across the city. I would have loved for every one of the 250 or 260,000 members of the city to have gifted the book to everybody, to somebody else in their family who was from Buffalo. That didn't happen, so I can't pretend it did. But it was well received by the folks that were interviewed, and I feel like folks came out to some of the signings, and it was really great. And I was touched and honored for the reception that it got.
So, Arthur, Buffalo 2022, early 2023, it's been a hard year for the city. I mean, we had the shooting at the supermarket. We had, the November 77 inches of snowstorm. We had the Christmas blizzard. We keep getting pummeled up here. It's just been real tough. And I'm wondering if you would like to offer any encouragement to the people of Buffalo, New York, to as we move into the final weeks of our winter here.
I mean, listen, I feel like certainly, I don't want to diminish any of the things that you just mentioned, and people have lost their lives. I feel like people have gone through hardships. I feel like Buffalo is Buffalo strong, though, and it's a great community that knows how to rely on each other and kind of turn to their neighbors and pick each other up. And certainly, I feel like throughout those things happening, that they've been, Buffalo has been on the minds of people outside of the city, and knowing that that's going on. Buffalo has had to pick itself up for many years before these recent trials and tribulations. The city has gone through a big has gone through some hard times over the years, as we mentioned earlier, with blight and blizzards, and not to put these in the same kind of area as people losing their lives, but the Buffalo Bills losing. I mean, certainly, but one of these days, it's going to be in terms of some of these things. I feel like listen, at least for something as I know how hardcore Buffalo Bills fans are, obviously, in terms of their team. One of these days, Charlie Brown's going to kick that ball. It's going to happen. And so that will come. As far as the rest of the city goes, and blight and how much the city has changed over the years, the development that's gone on down by the water, all of how the housing market has changed considerably. And, there has been a whole, at least during the time that I came, housing prices, and people were buying places up. And so I feel like there's a lot to be hopeful for with the city, certainly. So, I would say, like, Buffalo knows how to be Buffalo strong, and turn to each other and lean on each other for that kind of comfort.
Well, Arthur Bovino, author of Buffalo Everything, a guide to eating in the Nickel City. What a pleasure. What a pleasure to have this conversation with you, to hear, what you love about the city that I live in, man. And I'm just thrilled that you're willing to do this with me and talk about a book that it's a couple years old. So I'm going to give you a hearty go Bills, and I'm going to, I'm going to thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm wondering if there's anywhere that you would like for people who hear this to go check out, to follow you, if they want to see what else you're up to.
Yeah, NYC Best Pizza on Instagram is my handle, where I'm most active. Otherwise, I mean, the book can be found. It's Countryman Press. It can be both of the books can be found on Amazon or going through Countryman Press. So check them out there. They've been featured in Barnes and Noble. But those are the best places to find me. NYC Best Pizza, most likely.
Wonderful.
Arthur, Uni, check out the content coming up on Uni. We've got a whole bunch of awesome pizza recipes for you pizza lovers out there. And, I think a Buffalo pizza recipe for Uni should be in the works probably pretty soon.
Amazing. Arthur Bovino, thank you so much. It's been a real thrill.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.